Welcome back, Sebastian here. Time for my review for the 2024 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So it started with Leclerc on pole and Verstappen on pole, Leclerc second. Behrman and Bottas were starting on the softs, and everyone else was starting on the mediums. Now, Gasly came on the radio reporting that he had a gearbox issue before we even finished the formation lap. So that was certainly not a good start for the Alpine. But when we got going, it was a really good start for Perez, and he was up to P2 by turn 1. But Leclerc came back at him at turn 3 and retook second place. Gasly pitted at the end of that first lap to retire with that gearbox issue. So and it turns out that, according to Jack Doohan on the post-race show, that they basically couldn't select 6th gear, which at a track at this high speed with these kinds of high-speed corners, certainly not ideal. Now, Norris also had a jump start at the start of the race, and this was reported right away by Russell. So that was under investigation, but they decided that it was actually no further investigation. Or similar to the ones that we've seen from, I believe, Raikkonen, maybe not Raikkonen's, I think, but I believe Bottas had one a couple years ago, where he basically jumped, stopped, and then because he did not leave basically the box, the pit box that they designated, he was fine. So I guess that's what happened with Norris there. And honestly, if you stop and then restart, it hurts your start anyway. So it was actually hurt him, not really an advantage. Anyway, lap 4, Perez retook P2 from Leclerc at turn 1. So that battle ended pretty quickly, unfortunately for us. And on lap 5, Stroll forming a train behind him in P9, I believe, because I think he had a good start, got past Sonoda. But unfortunately for Stroll, he would crash into the barriers at turn 22, the really difficult left-right-hander in sector 3. He clipped the inside of the wall and then broke the suspension, and he basically just went straight on into the barrier. I think that's where Schumacher crashed in FP3, I believe, in the first race in Jeddah. Now, unfortunately for us, brings out the safety car, and everyone pits except for Norris, Hamilton, Hülkenberg, and Zhou. So basically the same problem that we had at, I believe, last year's Grand Prix and the Grand Prix before that and the first Grand Prix, is that we've had a crash in the opening, basically from somewhere between lap 10 and lap 20, where someone crashes, we get a safety car, and everyone pits at the exact same time, which has basically meant that the strategy was basically pointless. There was no undercuts, no overcuts really. And it was basically just everyone pitting at the exact same time. So, when we got going, lap 9, Behrman overtook Sonoda at the restart for P11. And then at turn 3 of the restart, there was contact between Magnussen and Albon. And basically, Magnussen drifts right and kind of presses Albon into the wall. Albon actually had some really unique take on it on the page post-race show that I was just listening to, where he basically said that because of the way that turn 3 is designed, that the driver on the inside has to steer outwards to basically kind of go outwards to take the ideal racing line. It means that it's really hard to judge how much space he's giving on either side. So a bit of a tricky one there, but Magnussen was given a 10-second penalty for that incident. Lap 11, Perez was given a 5-second penalty for an unsafe release in the pit lane with Fernando Alonso. Obviously not Perez's fault, but that's one that's on the team really. Norris, Hamilton, and then at this point after lap 11, Norris, Hamilton, Hülkenberg, and Zhou, the 4 drivers who didn't pit, were basically just being overtaken by all the drivers around. Norris was actually in the lead for a couple laps, but got quickly overtaken by the drivers behind him. Lap 17, Piastri tries to overtake Hamilton, but unfortunately isn't able to make it stick, and he goes into the runoff area. Then lap 22, Magnussen gets another 10-second penalty for dive bombing Sonoda and going off track at turn 3. So basically dive bombs Sonoda, goes off track, keeps the position, and as a result, another 10-second penalty for Magnussen. So at this point he has 20 seconds in penalties, and now instead of 5 seconds for Ocon, it's going to be 10 seconds for Magnussen. I'm going to count it now. I'm calling it now, Lap 23, the McLarens, I feel, were really struggling for straight line speed, Piastri especially. We know they were very, very fast in the high speed corners, but they seem to still be quite a bit draggy. And my pre-race prediction of a Norris podium does not look so good right now. Lap 29, Magnussen very aggressive with Tsunoda at turn 1, and Tsunoda actually loses a spot at the exit of turn 2 to Ocon because he was kind of pushed onto the curb on the exit of turn 2, which if you get on that curb, you basically have, it's impossible to accelerate out of the corner as you normally would. But after this point, we kind of saw what was going on here. I think Magnussen, 20 seconds in penalty, realistically his race is over. But Hülkenberg hasn't pitted and he's actually in the points. So Haas had to do a really good strategy. So Hülkenberg at this point was 14 seconds ahead, and they were basically trying as hard as they could to make a gap so that Hülkenberg could basically pit into. Of course, Hülkenberg hasn't pitted yet. Everyone else behind the train, behind Magnussen, including Magnussen, all on fresh tires. So what does Magnussen do? He drives very slowly, as slow as he possibly can, without letting anyone pass, and that's exactly what happens. Lap 33, the gap builds to 20 seconds, which is basically roughly how much you need for a pit stop. Obviously, it depends on the track, but lap 34, Hülkenberg pits, and he comes out 11th right behind Joe, who of course hasn't stopped yet, so he's basically put himself in a position to get points. So great work by Haas, especially recovering from a pretty tricky qualifying session for Hülkenberg. And for Hülkenberg, a great job keeping the tires alive for as long as he did, and also to Magnussen for the great defending. Obviously, he got 20 seconds in penalties, so but still great work for him. Let's see, yes. Lap 35, Piastri tries to overtake Hamilton again, doesn't work again. He goes into the run-up, but of course continues. Lap 38, Norris pits for the soft tires to cover Hamilton, who were pitted, oh yeah, I think I missed a line there. But yeah, lap 36, Magnussen basically, after Hülkenberg pits, he basically sped back up to kind of the speed he would have normally done, so it definitely showed that he was slowing down deliberately, but doing a really good job of it to keep the other cars behind. So yeah, great teamwork. Lap 37, Hamilton basically gives up hoping for a safety car and pits for soft tires, and then Norris pits the following lap to cover him off. So Hamilton comes out, Norris comes out 8th, had a bit of a slow stop, 4.1 seconds, so it made the gap between himself and Hamilton, which would have been pretty easy to cover if it was a normal, 2.5 second pit stop. Suddenly became much closer, but Norris still was able to stay ahead. Lap 42, Norris was given a black and white flag for weaving on the straight, trying to keep Hamilton behind. A bit dangerous, but I think understandably they weren't that close to each other, and it wasn't too egregious, so they decided not to give a penalty there. Joe pits, a very slow stop. I think they didn't say how long it was. I think it was probably 15-20 seconds at least. But yeah, so that's a big problem for Sauber. They had a 52-second pit stop last week, a very slow one. I'm going to guess 20 seconds today. And Joe comes out last. So that's definitely something that they're going to want to fix. If half of their pit stops, basically, not quite half, but let's say a quarter of their pit stops have been 20+ seconds, you're not going to be able to get points in F1 if you're doing that. So that's something they definitely need to fix. Lap 44, Albon overtakes Ocon from P12. Lap 46, Hamilton and Norris were starting to reel Behrman in. Of course, Behrman, rookie in his first race, we know that tire management can be an issue, especially when you're jumping into the car straight away. But so they were just kind of gradually reeling him in, especially on those fresh soft tires. But I think the gap was basically, it closed quite a bit, and then in the last 4 or 5 laps, it kind of plateaued at about 1.5 to 2 seconds, I would say. So it kind of got to a point where the advantage that they had on those fresh soft tires kind of was negated. Lap 49, Ricciardo spins turn 1. He was well out of the points, but still, basically besides Stroll, he was really the only driver to make a big mistake in the race. Lap 50, Verstappen takes the checkered flag, and Leclerc takes the fastest lap point on the final lap. A bit surprised there. I'm surprised Verstappen didn't get that fastest lap, but good on Leclerc to get that extra point for the team. And of course, for Behrman, he got 7th place on his F1 debut, making good use of the strategy, or I guess in this case, really capitalizing on Norris and Hamilton not having a particularly good strategy, trying to stay out till the end. So the final order from the 2024 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix: Verstappen first, Perez second, Leclerc third, Piastri 4th, Alonso 5th, Russell 6th, Behrman 7th, Norris 8th, Hamilton 9th. Hulkenberg with a point for the team in Haas. I think with the clear separation between 5th and 6th, the top 5 and then the bottom 5. I think it's going to be very, very like those points for those bottom 5 teams are going to be very valuable. Of course, if Stroll keeps having weekends like this, they may become a bit more plentiful. So so let's see. Albon 11th, Magnussen 12th. So I was a bit surprised when I saw this, and then I was like, oh yeah, all the drivers behind Magnussen were lapped, but Magnussen wasn't. So basically, the drivers Ocon down had to basically were finished right after Verstappen did, but Magnussen basically got to do another lap. He was the last driver on the lead lap, so the 20-second penalty was basically almost worthless, and he only dropped a position to Albon. So a bit interesting there. Would have been interesting if I don't think the teams would have been able to basically somehow concoct a strategy where Magnussen stayed in 10th and then was the only one not lapped. But still, interesting thing to think about. So Ocon 13th, Tsunoda 14th, tough race for him. I think he had some good pace, but I think was just kind of caught out, unfortunately, at certain moments. Sargent 15th, Ricardo 16th, Bottas 17th, Show 18th, and then your 2 DNFs, Stroll and Gasly. So taking a look at the championship standings, Verstappen extends his lead at the top of the championship, 51 points. He's only dropped 1.1 fastest lap point so far, so perfect start to the season for him. I believe they said as well this was his 100th podium in F1, and also to mention this was his 9th straight win in a row, so that means he's now ties Vettel's old mark, and he's now only one off his current mark that he of course set last year. Paris second, 36 points, Leclerc third, 28, fourth Russell 18, fifth Piastri 16, Sainz in sixth with 15, of course not racing today, seventh Alonso with 12, Norris also in eighth also with 12. Hamilton in ninth with 8 points, Behrman moves himself all the way into sixth, in 10th with 6 points. I wonder how long he'll stay there. 11th Hulkenberg with 1 point, and then 12th Stroll also with a single point. And that leaves Albon, Zhou, Magnussen, Ricardo, Ocon, Tsunoda, Sargent, Bottas, and Gasly all with 0 points. Of course, now the beauty of Behrman racing is that we now have 21 drivers in a 20-car championship, so someone's now going to have to finish 21st. And that'll be interesting to see who that 21st driver is. I actually don't think it'll be Behrman. I doubt all of the drivers here will get 6 points. So, interesting to see. So, that's all for my review of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Not a fantastic race. It was definitely one of the Grand Prix of all time. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.